Coming up, Israel and Iran at war as the two countries exchange attacks. Tonight, a discussion on U.S. involvement and how far it could go. Plus, USA! Honoring 250 years of the U.S. Army.
Every other country celebrates their victories. It's about time America did too.
The parade and show of military might in the nation's capital. Met with protests against President Trump across the country. And celebrating Pope Leo in his hometown. We'll take you to Chicago. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Explosions continue around Tel Aviv as Israel and Iran enter day 4 of missile strikes. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. The military operation that started Friday has cost both sides casualties and injuries. Israel reporting at least 24 dead. Iran says there are at least 224 casualties. Meanwhile, President Trump is still pushing for some sort of peace agreement. We begin our coverage tonight with CBN News national security correspondent Caitlin Burke. Caitlin?
The Israeli military now claims air superiority over Iran, specifically Tehran. Warplanes can fly freely over the capital city with little risk, having taken out most of the region's air defense. Still, Israel is taking casualties as Iran continues its barrage of ballistic missiles.
Israel had to do a preemptive strike in order to defend our civilians. Now, what we're targeting is strategic military targets. What they're targeting, like you see behind me in the various sites across Israel, is civilian infrastructure, residential communities.
CBN News Mideast Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell traveled to the Israeli city of Bat Yam, where an Iranian missile hit over the weekend.
Behind me is just one of the locations where Iranian missiles have hit. It sheared one apartment building in half, destroyed a building beside it, and the damage goes for blocks around. The missile contained nearly 1,000 pounds of explosives.
While Israeli communities remain threatened, most missiles and drones launched by Iran have been intercepted, and the IDF has yet to let up on its mission to destroy Iran's nuclear infrastructure.
We are on the trajectory of completely diminishing the Iranian regime's ability to produce and deliver nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. It's very important to understand that the nuclear weapons program is the most immediate threat. Imagine that one bomb that your reporters showed from Bat Yam and Haifa, imagine that was a nuclear warhead.
Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Yakil Leiter, tells CBN News he hopes Israel's allies will choose to join their fight.
Israel's the first step. So in many respects, we're the canary in the coal mine. And it would be nice if our allies in the West would look for every opportunity to assist in bringing this tyrannical regime to its knees. And it would be the best gift that the world could give to the Iranian people. Look, the Iranian people are the most pro-American people in the Middle East, just not the regime.
The IDF has issued evacuation warnings for civilians in Tehran ahead of planned strikes, and social media videos show Iranian citizens cheering Israel on, hoping this campaign will bring down the dictatorship that's ruled for 46 years. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
Details coming out of that military expansion, with Israel striking the building housing Iran's state TV while on the air. The IDF saying that building doubled as a communication center for the regime. For more on the U.S. response, we are joined by senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, the president is meeting with world leaders at the G7 summit in Canada right now. Iran and Israel, of course, dominating the conversation. How has President Trump responded to this conflict so far?
The word is stalwart. He is standing behind Israel, standing with Israel as Israel continues its attack and bombardment on the infrastructure and the military areas of Iran. And the president basically stating, I'm quoting him here, I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And he then said they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late. That's his message that he's signaling to the world, and particularly to Tehran.
Yeah, and there are reports that President Trump was saying telling Israel not to kill the supreme leader. Kelly, how important is this ongoing G7 summit in terms of Iran and Israel?
And look, it's very important. They were supposed to meet to talk about the global economy and the trade war, the tariff war that is going on. The president trying to cut a deal with all of these different partners within the G7. But right now, because of what's going on with Israel and Iran and how that could affect global markets, particularly energy markets such as oil, this is a very important topic right now because everything revolves around what's happening in the Middle East, at least in the president's mind and the leaders of the G7. The president making it abundantly clear with his Arab neighbors that he visited just a couple of weeks ago that he is trying to get Iran back to the negotiating table to structure a deal. The Arab states would not like to see Iran have a nuclear weapon. And the president himself says well, categorically that this is not something that Iran should ever have, and that's the use of a nuclear weapon.
Yeah. As you mentioned, the president does want a nuclear deal with Iran. Kelly, do we know, where that stands, and does the president still believe that that can actually happen? You mentioned he says Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran definitely has its sights set on President Trump. Where do things stand?
Oh, I will tell you, the Times of Israel just reported today that the three Arab states that the president recently visited, which is Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, all three of them have indicated to the president that Tehran wants to strike a deal now. The president has even said so himself today during a brief meeting that he had with Canada's Prime Minister Mike Carney before the start of today's G7. The president stating they want to come to the table to do a deal now. The president stated, I gave them 60 days to actually get to the table peacefully. And the president stating this will resolve itself in two ways: diplomatically or deadly, with the strikes that Israel is now conducting. But the president, make no bones about it, definitely wants to have a deal diplomatically to save the Iranian people from going through the mistakes that the regime has made and taking a foolhardy approach to build a nuclear weapon, which the president has adamantly said, as well as the Arab leaders that he's been consulting with and the Middle East, stating that this is something that Israel cannot afford to allow Iran to do. But Israel's gone into Iran because it stated that based on its intelligence, Iran was just days, if not weeks, away from completing a nuclear weapon.
All right. Senior White House correspondent Kelly Wright. Kelly, thank you. Now let's dive deeper into the potential impact of a widespread conflict. Michael OHanland, Senior Fellow and Director of Research in Foreign Policy at the Brookings Institution, is with us now for more on that. Michael, welcome. So Iran is saying that it's now ready to talk. How diminished is the regime tonight, Michael?
It's an excellent question. And they say they want to talk. They don't say what terms they would accept. It does appear that they're scared, and certainly seeing several of the top military leadership knocked off after we ourselves had killed Qasem Soleimani back in 2020 has to make the Ayatollah and any other senior Iranian leader fear that he could be next. And whether or not President Trump has given the Ayatollah a reprieve, as some reports suggest, may or may not be true, may or may not last. So in that sense, Iran's airspace is owned by Israel at this point. It doesn't mean that Israel can do anything it wants. And in particular, I'm not sure if Israel can really get deep enough to destroy the uranium enrichment facility at Fordo. I'm not even sure we could, frankly, but certainly Israel is going to struggle. However, Israel seems to be in a position to just keep attacking indefinitely. And of course, it has American help in defending its own airspace and own people from Iranian retaliation, although it's not a perfect defense.
Yeah.
So you add all that up, and I think Iran would like to talk. I don't know that they're going to roll over.
Michael, how long do you think Iran can hold on?
Indefinitely. I think that these kinds of attacks are going after the crown jewels of the country's nuclear technology and, to some extent, its brain trust. But in terms of the ability of the people to survive, I mean, Israel's making it pretty clear. I think in one of your reports, Israel trying to draw a contrast between the fact that they are attacking only military targets inside of Iran, whereas Iran is retaliating against Israeli civilian population. And so to the extent that that means the Iranian economy is still sort of chugging along, I think Iran could hang in there for quite some time. And I think Israel could keep attacking for quite some time. As you know, there was initially last week talk about a 14-day air campaign, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more. I wouldn't be surprised if it's less.
Michael, what would it look like if the U.S. gets drawn further into this conflict?
Well, that's an excellent question. If the presumed goal is the destruction of the Iranian nuclear weapons program systematically and categorically, then I still question the conventional wisdom that says even the United States could do it from the air alone. And so if that really becomes the goal and we get involved, then I think you're talking about a limited ground operation right in the heart of Iran. Now, it doesn't mean we'd have to do a big fight against the bulk of the Iranian military. And I'm not predicting this will happen. I'm just trying to follow through on the logic of your question. If we did get involved with that goal, I think there might be a need for a special forces raid with also a perimeter defense created to keep out Iranian reinforcements while we do the raid and keep a big air cover in the meantime. That's one way to think about a possible American role in this conflict. I don't think it will come to that, but it could.
Yeah. What about some of the other countries? You know, I'm thinking about Russia, some of the more adversarial countries. What are they saying tonight? What would it look like if they get involved in this conflict?
It's a good question, because the first instinct is to say we really don't have to worry about it because Russia's bogged down with its own war, and it doesn't tend to get involved in Middle East conflicts where the United States or its partners or Israel are already involved. On the other hand, we've been surprised before by Vladimir Putin, and he did enter the Syrian civil war in 2015 in a pretty effective way that helped keep President Assad in power there for about 9 years. So I don't rule it out altogether, but I don't see what Russia gets for that effort, and I would be very surprised if they did it.
Yeah. I mean, Michael, it's been really interesting to see some of the Iranian people voicing support for Israel. Do you think that this latest campaign could actually bring down the Iranian regime?
It's going to be tough because we've seen big protests in Iran before. Unfortunately, this theocracy is entrenched after 46 years, and it's, circled the wagons. And sure, they've lost 8 or 10 of their top people in the last year, various forms of violence or accident, but they've got a lot left. And they're not particularly bothered by their own people's sentiments or protests. And so I don't expect that. I think, you could see a renewed debate as to whether the Ayatollah Khomeini should be targeted. And in any event, I don't expect him to survive that much longer because he's quite old and frail. Mm-hmm. But I think that the Iranian regime, the theocracy, will probably replace from within. One hopes they would have a little bit more interest in moderating their behavior so that they could improve their standing in the world and their economy. And they've lost so much influence in the region, maybe their ambitions have been taken down a notch or two. But they also could desire revenge and pursue that. So unfortunately, I think this regime is still pretty dangerous.
Okay. Michael OHanland with the Brookings Institution. Michael, always good to have you on. Thank you. Well, a string of weekend attacks across Minnesota have come to an end. The suspect accused of murdering a former state lawmaker and injuring another Saturday is now in custody after a day on the run. Police say 57-year-old Vance Bolter was posing as a police officer when he shot and killed former Democratic House Speaker Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, at their suburban Minneapolis home. Authorities say he shot and injured a second Democratic lawmaker, Senator John Hoffman, and his wife at their home. Authorities say Bolter stalked his victims in a premeditated attack targeting Democratic politicians.
It is a frightening time we are living in. Political violence is prevalent, and the way we talk to and about each other has raised the temperature to unfathomable levels. We cannot continue on this way.
Vance Bolter inflicted unimaginable harm to our community Saturday morning, and he did it while impersonating the very people who are trusted to protect and serve. These violent acts strike at the heart of our democracy and the safety of those who serve the public with dedication and courage.
Authorities say Bolter planned at least 2 other attacks that night. He faces state charges of first-degree murder and federal murder charges. Coming up, celebrations and protests, mixed reaction to this weekend's military parade. Welcome back. Tanks and soldiers filled the streets of D.C. Saturday in honor of the Army's 250th anniversary. CBN News correspondent Tara Merchner takes us inside the celebration and protests surrounding the event.
In a rare display of military might,
USA! USA!
Thousands of soldiers march in formation, escorted by tanks, Humvees, and helicopters roaring overhead. A bold display in the nation's capital.
It makes me feel proud.
It was all part of a historic celebration as the U.S. Army marks 250 years of service.
I think it's good. I don't know why they didn't really have a year.
Celebrating the courage and the bravery that each of our service members, show when they fight for us. It's important to celebrate that.
The parade, spearheaded by President Trump, who long pushed for a large-scale military display in the Capitol. While not organized in his honor, it coincided with his 79th birthday.
Our souls are filled with gratitude for every generation of warriors who have worn the uniform all the way back to the very beginning.
The last time a national military parade was held in the nation's capital was in June of 1991, marking victory in the Gulf War. It was a moment of broad national unity. Today, the tone is far more divided.
Well, supporters praise the event as inspiring.
And it's really cool to be out here and just come together as a country.
Not everyone was celebrating.
I'm really disappointed. It looks like an armed city.
Democrats criticize it as an expensive political stunt.
$45 million for a parade, for God's sake.
The event also sparked more than 2,000 demonstrations across the country. The No Kings movement protesting what they see as authoritarian actions by the Trump administration, including the parade itself. The march is mostly peaceful, but some crowds clashed with police in Los Angeles and Atlanta. In Northern Virginia, a man drove a truck into protesters, injuring one. But along the parade route, a stark contrast of patriotism and gratitude to the Army. For 2.5 centuries of service and sacrifice. In Washington, Tara Merchner, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. All right, next on Faith Nation, we travel to the Windy City for an event honoring Chicago's very own Pope Leo. Chicago showcased a variety of crowds over the weekend. Tens of thousands flooded downtown for the No Kings protest, while on the south side, a very different gathering around prayer, praise, and worship. My Faith Nation co-host John Jessup was there.
Chicago, known for its skyline, deep dish, its storied sports teams, and iconic figures like Michael Jordan, Oprah Winfrey, and Barack Obama. Over the weekend here at Wright Field, the city honored one of its newer hometown heroes, celebrating Pope Leo and introducing his Southside roots to the world.
Holy Spirit, come, let your will be done.
Both inside and outside the stadium, songs of worship echoed across Chicago's South Side for a special mass featuring stories about Pope Leo XIV, a man many knew here as Bob Prevost, a native of Chicago and an avid White Sox fan.
My dear friends,
the Pope addressing the crowd by video from the Vatican, many energized by his selection to lead the Catholic Church, and on this day led by his words. Among them, Sister Elizabeth Ann Yutzes, who never expected to see an American pontiff.
And when I heard the announcer say, Roberto, I'm like, it's him, he got it.
After the news, she and her fellow sisters remembered the new pope as an old familiar friend and tracked down photos of when he offered a blessing to honor their order's founder.
And she looked it up and she said it was August 28, 1999.
These are like private investigators?
Yes.
For many, the service reaffirming their faith.
God is always with you, this stuff, and then all the people that are here just to enjoy that. It feels just so touching.
That the Holy Spirit has chosen one among us. It's very exciting, and we're here to support him, to pray for him and his ministry.
The Pope directing a special message to young people.
I'd like to say that you are the promise of hope for so many of us.
Telling them to open their hearts to God, serve the community, and be a light in the world. Young Catholics like Jeffrey Smith already feel a connection to Leo. He left his graduation ceremony at DePaul University and came straight to Mass.
We had this planned out, full day of activity. I've been up since 5:30.
Catholic youth workers also noticing the renewed interest.
Especially the kids that are like from Chicago, and they like all know the Pope. They're like, yeah, Pope Leo.
I know a lot have left, but I guarantee you there's going to be a lot more people coming back.
The crowds are long gone, but the excitement and euphoria still linger. Many of the faithful we talked to wondering aloud whether the election of Pope Leo, the first American and native Chicagoan, will lead to spiritual renewal and revival. John Jessup, CBN News, Chicago.
Thank you, John. And still ahead, a father-son duo using a microphone to build a legacy. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a father-son duo is bonding with the help of technology. Former NFL star Tim Green was diagnosed with ALS in 2016. That's left him unable to use most of his muscles. But that didn't stop him from starting a podcast with his son Troy called Nothing Left Unsaid, where they talk about everything from sports to life. Tim uses a special camera that translates his eye movements into words. It's a gift not only for listeners, but also for Tim and Troy.
It became a way for us to share honest conversations, laugh together, and talk about life.
And Troy says he's thankful to have access to his dad's mind and spend meaningful time together. That's going to do it for Faith Nation. Have a great night.